So the Oscars are tonight. It's a big night in the film world. Everybody's going to be watching. I especially like the Oscars, not because of what wins or what's usually nominated, but just because I like big awards shows like this. I think they're fun. But that's besides the point. Today I'm going to be ranking all 10 of the Best Picture winners, even the ones I haven't reviewed yet, because I finally got to see all of them last night. And I just wanted to put some thoughts out there. Wanted to review something. Not a lot of new releases happened this week, so I thought this would be a better replacement for that. Plus, you get to have some of my thoughts on what critics and obviously Academy people are saying are the best films of the year. So, without further ado, let's rank them from worst to best. Coming in last place is definitely going to be Wicked. I was not that big of a fan of this film. I felt that it was very contrived. It was very studio, very plasticky, and that kind of sucks because I know a lot of people that really like the musical, and I'm sure the musical is very interesting. In fact, the bones of this movie are very interesting, and the premise and all of that, and it starts off intriguing, but it just gets so tiresome and so boring and so just blah. I feel like the songs are very messy and don't flow well into each other at all. I feel like the story being told here is very lame, and they're kind of omitting parts that seem important, but also breezing by parts that seem very integral to the plot. I felt like the cinematography and the lighting was god awful. It was so Netflixy and very, very cheap looking. I really, may it just not be for me? Yes, but I also just think this is a poor example of like these big studio driven musicals and how badly they can kind of crash and burn. Coming in next is Emilia Perez. This is the big pariah for the year. This is the movie that everybody's targeting and saying, why is this nominated? What the hell is this doing here? And I get it. I truly do get it. This movie is a huge swing and a miss. It's very ambitious. It's trying to say a lot. It's trying to do a lot. It's trying to be this big, messy, kind of almost Baz Luhrmann-esque musical, and it just fails. Some of the songs are laughably bad. I mean, the man to woman song is woo, they strike out on that pretty badly. But other than that, there's like not much of note to this film, if that makes any sense. There's a lot going on. They're trying to shove a lot at you, and it's admirable that they're trying to tell this story in the way that they are. But it doesn't ever, you have never feel emotionally connected to it. You always are a little bit afar because it's so ludicrous and so messy and so half-assed in most of its sequences that you end up just not feeling anything while watching it. And honestly, I was pretty bored throughout most of Emilia Perez. So I put it over Wicked just because I thought at least this was trying to do something unique and different. At least this was swinging for the fences instead of just playing it safe and being the most crowd pleasing movie of the year. So yeah, Emilia Perez definitely a not even like a disappointment, just a failure. Next is a movie I did already talk about, and that's A Complete Unknown. I really don't have much to say about this film. It's fine. It's whatever. Timothy Chalamet is pretty good. Edward Norton is great in it. But other than that, whatever. This movie is just another musical biopic. It doesn't say anything new. I don't think it really added anything to the mystique of Bob Dylan. I don't think it tried to tell an interesting story. I don't think that any of the editing, costumes, anything like that was worth talking about. Nothing in this movie is worth talking about outside of the performances. So, yeah, very whatever movie. Next up is going to be I'm Still Here. This was probably the most disappointing of the bunch. While I do see why people are grasping onto this, I do see why it's getting so much praise. For me personally, it felt very safe. It was very meandering. It felt very one note. The first 40 minutes are actually super interesting. You really get to know this family and the dynamics that they have and the state of the city that they live in. It's very, I don't know, I liked the vibe they were going for there. But once the movie hits its central premise and the main inciting incident happens, which is, again, like 30 to 40 minutes in, it just repeats itself. It kind of walks in circles over and over and over again and beats you in the head with the same message that really isn't that unique of a message in and of itself. Yes, is this an important real life story? Absolutely, you should go research it and actually watch like informative documentaries about that. But this movie, I don't think ever it doesn't offer a unique perspective on that, or is like a necessity watch to understand this concept. I think it's very like baby's first steps into why fascism is bad, and that's it. So there's not a lot to chew on here. It's not that interesting. I didn't hate it. It's fine, and I won't knock other people for loving this, but I felt the attempt to be kind of weak. Next up is going to be Conclave, and this is where I start really liking the movies. I think there's a huge um, gap in quality between I'm Still Here and Conclave. Conclave was fantastic. I thought it was one of the most sharply written films of the year. I thought it was so well performed, from Ralph Fiennes to the guy that plays like that new priest to the evil priest hitting the vape. I thought that was hilarious. I love that it leans so heavily into the dramatics and the whispers behind the scenes, pulling everything together. It's so intriguing and it's so well thought out, and it can be applied not as a metaphor, but as with messaging through so many different things, even with outside of the church and religion. And I just found it to have all of these layers to just peel back, and it's like good juicy gossip that you just get more and more of little by little until you reach that final conclusion of being like, oh my god, that's what. So I really love Conclave. I think is a really good shot at cleaning up tonight at the Oscars. I would not be mad. Definitely deserves like editing, sound. I think it's adapted screenplay. I'm not sure if it's original or adapted. Direction from Edward Berger, who's only continuing his hot streak after All Quiet on the Western Front. So yeah, Conclave is great. It just gets beat out by some of these other movies. Not its fault, but it's a very top-heavy list, I would say. This year's nominees, like the bottom 4 or 5 that I just talked about, not great, not worth seeing, really unmemorable in my opinion. And then once you get to Conclave, it's like, okay, these movies are must-sees. So yeah, Conclave, definitely recommend. Fantastic. Next up is Anora, another movie I went into pretty heavy detail in my review, so I'm going to keep this a little brief. But yeah, Anora is great. I love seeing Sean Baker finally get his flowers at the Oscars. Yes, The Florida Project was also nominated for a couple of things, and I'm not sure if Red Rocket was or not. But here he kind of breaks into the mainstream with Anora. I feel like this is the first time that everyone went to see one of his movies, not just people who are in the know about him. And that's great to see, because I think he's one of the best working directors right now. I think he has such a unique style and such a knack for writing these kinds of characters and normalizing otherwise taboo subjects. And with Anora, it gets a little messy in the middle. I think that it doesn't have the strongest second act, but everything else about it is so, it's very much like a human experience with this movie, and it is so layered and so complex and so funny and so emotional and sad, but also uplifting. And Mikey Madison is incredible in this. I hope that she can come somehow pull off the win here. I would not be upset if she upset Demi Moore tonight. But yeah, I loved Anora. Maybe not as much as other people, but I've come around to it even more the more I've stewed on it. I want to go see it again. It is a fantastic release and really just shows the versatility that Sean Baker has as a filmmaker. I almost forgot to talk about this film for some reason. I think it's just because I just saw it yesterday. But coming in next is The Brutalist. This movie really was on my radar for a while. I'd heard about it, I think, over a year ago now from seeing some of the stills and learning about, the plot and the synopsis and who was involved here. I really wanted to see it. It took me a really long time to finally get to a theater and convince, I guess, myself, because I went by myself. I couldn't find anybody else that wanted to go see it. But having finally saw it, I can say that it is as good as other people are claiming it to be. I think this is a very ambitious movie, obviously. We don't get a lot of passion projects like this anymore. Big character-driven films about people's lives and their achievements and stuff like that. It feels very old school in a lot of ways, even in the story that it's telling. So I really appreciated that. I thought the cinematography was absolutely gorgeous. I think it should win. I think that Adrian Brody is really great in this film. I think that all of his supporting cast, especially like Felicity Jones, is fantastic. Guy Pearce gives a really good performance. Yes, it's very Oscar baity and like it's like, yeah, of course The Brutalist is going to win a bunch of stuff. It's a 3.5 hour long movie about a guy who dedicated his life to architecture, but it's way more than that to me. I feel like it's so inspiring, and it's about, you know, somebody going through hell to achieve their artistic vision, and to, you know, really not giving up on their passions and being that dedicated to it that they would risk their lives so many times over just to be able to do what they love. And I think that is so such an aspiring message, especially for now, as we're seeing like a lot of art kind of decay and you know, boil down to very materialistic things. So a movie being this long, this overindulgent, this you know, not short-sighted, but like, you know, one track, and knowing what it wants to be, and being such a passion project for its director, and seeing it have the success that it's been having is very inspiring, especially for people who want to be more creative filmmakers, who want to, you know, keep pushing the envelope of what the medium could be. This is a huge win for that crowd, which obviously I am a part of. So yeah, I absolutely loved The Brutalist. I thought it's one of the most important movies of 2024. Maybe not one of my favorites, absolutely, you know, towards the top 5 or 10, but it still is a great movie that everybody should go check out. Coming in at number 4, I believe, is Dune Part 2. Again, went into heavy detail about this, and I don't have much else to add on here. It's Dune Part 2. This is a sci-fi epic that we haven't seen the likes of since the early 2000s with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it was universally loved. Everyone went to go see this. This was an event. It truly felt like the movies were back in early 2024, before all the shitty Oscar discourse and all that started later in the year. But with Dune Part 2, I really, really loved how they just went for it. There's a lot of goofy sequences in this movie that a lot of people don't talk about that I actually admire and think that should have, you know, should not have been cut out, should have stayed in the movie, because it stays true to the true heart of sci-fi, of the genre. And yes, it's taking itself very seriously, which it should have, and is grand and epic and telling, you know, this complex story. But I also like that there is relief moments that aren't, you know, cringe-inducing or anything like that. So yes, Dune Part 2 is a cinematic achievement. We all know this by now. It's great. I meant to say that Dune Part 2 is actually in 3rd place, and in 2nd place, our runner-up this year is The Substance. I loved this movie from pretty much the opening frame. I love how angry this film was. I love how in your face it is at all times. It never relents in the best way possible. I thought both of the central performances were great. Kind of upset that Margaret Qualley got snubbed. Why? Demi Moore definitely deserves her flowers, though. She was great in this film. I think the screenplay is phenomenal. I think the direction is great. I love how gross it is. I love, again, how it just goes for the throat and does never let up. Yeah, this movie's only grown on me ever since. It's going to be very high on my best of the year list. I loved The Substance. The Substance nearly came out on top in this ranking if it weren't for this last film, The Nickel Boys. Man, what a powerful film this is. And now look, I get it. I understand if this doesn't fully work for you because of the main, not gimmick, but the main technique implemented with the cinematography from the point of view storytelling. I understand if that can be a little jarring. I can understand if it takes a while to settle in. If I'm even being honest, it took me a little bit to settle into. But once you do, and this whole thing kind of, you know, comes into focus and you see it fully and it all clicks, this is a cinematic experience unlike anything I've had in a really long time. It's so powerful and so gut-wrenching, but at the same time so humanizing and very real. It's almost hard to put into words how masterfully made this film is. I think it's something that everyone should see. I think it's something that everyone should educate themselves about. I think that the bold cinematography is definitely innovative and could be influential for years to come. I think it's such an interesting way to tell this story. I thought the relationship between the two friends was beautiful. I thought the ending was an absolute sucker punch that I did not see coming, that really, again, puts everything else into a completely different perspective. I love the use of timelines throughout the film. I thought that was woven in beautifully. This film just works on every single level for me and is such a crowning achievement, and is something I'm really mad at myself for not seeing sooner, but I did finally get to see it, and it is my favorite Best Picture nominee this year. I don't think it's going to win. I think Anora is going to win, but I do hope it gets something, because man, was this an achievement. So that's my ranking for all the Best Picture nominees. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the Oscars tonight. I'll see you in the next video.